What's going on, everyone? For today's video, it's going to be a Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning review. Sit back, relax, get some popcorn, because this video is going to be a long one, most likely. I have a bunch of notes in front of me. I've been preparing for this video for about a week, so I'm excited since we watched this movie a while back. So I needed to talk to my brother here and there to see like stuff that I missed. He helped me out a lot. The way this is going to work is I'm going to go into spoiler-free territory first, and then after that I will let you know when we're gonna go into the spoilers. And yeah, that's how it's gonna work. Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna give this a rating or not. We'll see. And I'm also gonna be showing some video game gameplay. Don't mind that. Just footage, just games that I was playing throughout the week. Nostalgia hit me and I just decided, you know what, let's just put it in a video. Why not? Even if it's just has nothing to do with the review. That way you're just not staring at my beautiful face. Let's just get right into the video, okay? So the non-spoiler section of the video, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning continues what happened in Dead Reckoning Part 1. Why isn't this movie called Dead Reckoning Part 2? Well, there's a reason for that. It was a marketing decision to emphasize that this movie would be the final one of the film series, according to a Collider article that I read. But the real reason is because the first film did not perform well at the box office. The first film made approximately 567.5 million worldwide at the box office. They had a budget of 291 million. So you might think, oh, they made some profit, but not according to the studio, because there were so many more costs added because of the pandemic. The pandemic was at play during this time. That was the time when Tom Cruise went ballistic on people because they weren't wearing their masks. I don't know if you guys remember that.
You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us, because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every studio at night, insurance companies, producers, and they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. They're creating thousands of jobs, you I don't ever want to see it again, ever. And if you don't do it, you're fired. And I see you do it again, you're gone.
But he had all the right to be angry at those people because, you know, they were stopping the production and they were going to get people sick. And at the time, there was a lot of unknowns with COVID. And I don't want to get into that whole thing. That's a whole different video. But the point is, yeah, he went ballistic on these people. So those are the numbers for that. So a little fun fact, did you know that Dead Reckoning is a navigational method that uses the distance and direction traveled in order to calculate one's position? I didn't know that. Well, that's what Dead Reckoning is, apparently. Final Reckoning is like final judgment. So that's why this movie is called that. But the reason why they changed it in the first place because the first film didn't do as well. I wanted to talk about the estimates of the difference, like how studios make money according to some articles that I read, just compared to like who gets the bigger piece of the pie at the very beginning when the movie releases in theaters. And usually it's the studios, right? According to this article that I read, it is estimated that the first 2 weeks, movie studios make about 80 to 100% of the sales revenue. And as weeks passes, that ratio becomes a 50-50. The point is, majority of the money that studios make in their movies is on the first 2 weeks, okay? So there could be like a negotiation between like the cinema or whatever facility, right? And they're over here like the majority of the time, cinemas or theaters, they make majority of their money from concessions, right? So that's why they overprice popcorn and soda and all that candy and stuff. There's a reason for that. It's because at the very beginning, they don't really make that much money. It's not until later on where the studios start splitting that money. Why is that important to mention it here? Well, it's because the film earned 77 million domestically and 190 million worldwide during its opening weekend. It wasn't looking too bright, especially because that budget was for The Final Reckoning is 400 million, making it one of the most expensive movies ever produced. Yes, you heard me right. $400 million to make The Final Reckoning. That is insane. That is ridiculous. I mean, you're putting this movie up there with like basically Star Wars The Force Awakens, like one of the most expensive movie to date, and that movie made over $2 billion, if I remember correctly. This right here is just like you're asking for a miracle here. Like the studio, I'm pretty sure they're expecting at least 700 mil, $1 billion. The trajectory right now, that number is 548.3 million worldwide at the box office. So, and it's still growing because it's still in theaters, I believe, but it's not going to be in theaters for too long. So I don't think it's going to reach that 700 million mark. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that really quick, just a couple numbers thrown at you, tell you guys like how well the movie's doing. On to the non-spoiler portion. I should have mentioned that was more like statistics for the film. So you have to give the production and the crew some credit here. They know how to do action and thrill. I mean, they've had 7 other movies of practice making this element a strong suit. So they know how to keep the audience engaged, and I was engaged for the most part. This is one of those films, and I'm going to mention it later, that you need to be paying attention. The practical effects in this film are top notch. I mean, the last action sequence in this film alone is worth the price of admission, without a doubt. The submarine scene was so cool, and I love the soundtrack to that scene specifically. The soundtrack was okay overall, but in that scene, it just hit different, dude. I mean, the ambience made me reminisce when I was a kid playing Halo 2, a mission called Sacred Icon. If you guys remember, you go through like corridors as the Arbiter, and you're defending yourself against the flood. That soundtrack, when the flood like first shows up, it has a very similar tune and you know, to this scene where Ethan is going down, basically swimming further and further down to reach the Russian submarine. Albeit the very beginning though, this film is like literally just set up. Okay, you're going to be sitting there for a little while, and you better be paying attention, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble for Act 2 and Act 3. You're going to be like, what the heck is going on? But yeah, they're trying to set up what will be needed in order to accomplish the mission. And it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot. It gets very complicated. So it's better for you to be paying attention during this time. It's almost like the mission is becoming more and more impossible as the film keeps going. The movie almost becomes the hyperbole of the franchise. Like, I think that is the best way of describing this film. You know, the planets and the stars need to align. There's no room for error. This is like as high as stakes as it gets. Literally the end of the world. I'm not even joking. Like, that's what we're facing here. It's one of those cliches where like the protagonist is the only person that can stop the Armageddon. You need to hold on to your suspension of disbelief here. If you have any level of education or just working brain cells, you will look at this film and say, yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen, or that was a 1 in a million. You know, this movie does suffer from a weak antagonist, specifically Gabriel. It seems like the main villain is just not him. It's the near ending threat of the entity. So I actually want to mention something that my brother wrote down that sums up Gabriel very well. Shout out to my brother for this one. Here it goes. Gabriel ultimately falls short as compelling villain in The Final Reckoning. His motivations for aligning with and later attempting to control the entity are murky at best, with his personal vendetta against Ethan feeling underwhelming for a character positioned as a major threat. Much of the narrative weight shifts to the entity itself, relegating Gabriel to the role of a servant rather than a true antagonist. I agree with that religiously. Okay? Deeply. There is an article that described Gabriel as well as like the Final Reckoning feeling less like a central figure and more like a lingering loose end from a larger story that moved on without him. That is true. I mean, the people are speaking facts here. It's just Gabriel just became literally the word irrelevant as soon as he was done with what happened in this film. It's just, it makes him less menacing in Dead Reckoning. It makes him like whatever he was planning, you know, that whole mysterious figure that he had going on in Dead Reckoning Part 1, that's gone. This guy wasn't what we thought he was. He's ultimately becoming a disappointment. And I thought, you know, what my brother wrote down and that article that I just read, that's just an amazing way of summarizing that character. Okay, I might be making the film sound terrible, but it's not. Like I said before, the film knows its strengths and implements everything they have learned throughout the franchise, right? And they've had a solid amount of movies to practice. And at the end of the day, it's a popcorn flick. If you are a fan of action thrillers, you will enjoy this film. If you are a fan and you love Mission Impossible, this is more Mission Impossible. The thing about it though is like there's pros and cons to it. It's not a perfect film. And like I said, you're going to have to hold on to, I think I mentioned it, your suspension of disbelief in certain points in the film. It's okay. For the sake of, summarizing or wrapping everything up, wrapping the franchise, if this is the last film of the series, I think this film pays homage and deserves to be among the rest of the films. Simple as that, okay? That's the spoiler-free version of this video. Now, if you don't want any spoilers, I would click out now. Get the hell out of the video because I'm about to go into spoiler territory. Here we go. Spoilers. First things first, there's a lot of setup. They have a cruciform key from the previous film that is used to unlock a thingamajig known as the Podkova in a Russian submarine that will be needed for Luther's USB MacGuffin poison pill drive that he created, because Luther's MacGuffin needs to be plugged into it in order to make the entity less effective. It doesn't end here though. There is another drive that needs to be plugged into a bunker's server room and disconnected at the exact time Ethan gives the go in order to save the world. If you are still here, get ready because it's about to get even more complicated, all right? The movie starts right after the events of Dead Reckoning with Ethan Hunt watching a VHS tape. You know those messages in the franchise that end with "this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds"? The message is from the president, and it's Madam President of the United States, and she's asking Ethan to come in with the cruciform key because of all the chaos going on in the world now because of the previous film. And, all the madness going on with the entity taking over every nation's nuclear arsenal, essentially. That's the whole premise. Then Ethan meets up with Benji and Luther. Luther looks like he hasn't slept in a while because he has been making that MacGuffin poison pill drive, and he just doesn't look well. Okay, there's a IV like in the corner of the room. You can tell like that's where he's been resting and he's been getting his fluids, and he's got bags under his eyes, and he just, like I said, doesn't look well. He's been creating this poison pill drive, which is very complicated to do in order to control, or in order to make this artificial intelligence less efficient. But in the meantime, Ethan and Benji need to figure out where Gabriel is located, right? To start, they go after Gabriel's apprentice, Paris, which, if you don't know who that is, it's the lady that was after Ethan in Dead Reckoning Part 1, and she gets knocked out, I think, in the alleyway or something like that, and Ethan lets her survive. And that plays a major role in her character arc in this film. That's Paris. She's in here. So who 2 months later, after the events of Dead Reckoning, is locked up in a prison. I think Paris is being escorted. She's like in a facility, some type of prison somewhere in Europe. I don't know where. I forgot where it is. Maybe it's Czech. Maybe, I don't know. But the point is, she's locked up somewhere and she's being escorted by like these two security guards. Those two security guards are wearing masks. The IMF masks that Ethan has worn throughout the whole series. That's Benji and Ethan escorting her. That's where they meet this other character. I forgot the name of him. I think it's starts with a D. Dagon, I think that's his name. That's another character. And then they're facing off. They're trying to get information from Paris, and that's when Paris, like, she has her whole little small character arc right there, where she tells Ethan in the general direction of where Gabriel's going to be, or the general location. And it's a very tense moment because they're pointing guns at each other and all this stuff. It's pretty cool. They get the info from Paris where Gabriel will be located. Ethan and Benji go to that social event. Something goes wrong. Benji freaks out and tells Ethan, abort, get out of there. Ethan just decides to take the risk, but ends up getting caught by two security guards. And so he's screwed. And like a superhero to the rescue, Grace shows up to help Ethan, and she does this move. She's like a really good pickpocketer, and she takes both of the security guards' weapons, and then she leads them towards like this private area. But somehow they still get captured. I mean, they knock out those two people, and then there's more security guards when they walk out, and so they get caught. They wake up in a torture chamber. All the stuff that you would see in those types of chambers: knives, a saw blade, a hammer to, like, I'm assuming, to break bones and stuff like that. And Gabriel is there, and Gabriel wants Ethan to do something in order to save Grace. You know, villain standard stuff. Gabriel wants the thingamajig, which is the Podkova. It's called the Podkova from the Russian submarine in order to control the entity. This film suffers from Dead Reckoning's villain problem, which is not establishing who the main villain is. In Dead Reckoning, I guess it was Gabriel, but was like a disappointment even in that film. I gotta rewatch that actually. And in this film, the entity is the main antagonist, with Gabriel as the secondary character, the secondary antagonist. But in reality, he's the entity's B word. Ethan manages to escape because we wouldn't have a movie otherwise. And he kicks butt so hard that Grace is stunned. Like, it's literally one of those scenes where you don't see, like, you do see there's some action sequence that happens. He beats out like the first guy or whatever. And then after, there's like two other guys. Those action sequences happen off screen and he just beats the shit out of them completely. And you're hearing like noises, like stabbing noises, crunching noises. And you just see Grace's face, like she's like stunned. She's like, holy shit, I didn't know this was a side of Ethan. Like, who am I helping? Like, you know, it's pretty funny. They make a comedic effect of it. Oh, and by the way, as all these action sequences are happening where Ethan is trying to escape from this lair, Gabriel runs away, of course, like a B word. And then Ethan starts chasing after Gabriel with his like famous Mission Impossible run. Okay, I mean, the point is he does this famous run, right? Which I love. I'm a fan of. He's like super straight running. He looks so serious. Gabriel escapes because the power of metal gates is with him. I'm not joking. Like, Gabriel like closes gates. Right? He closes it and Ethan can't pass through, and now he's got to find a different way. He's like kicking it. But then he notices something. He finds how Gabriel was communicating with the entity. Some type of large chamber device, which you see in the trailers. It's in Dead Reckoning as well. Paris warns him, this will change you. Ethan is trying to go in there and basically speak to the entity, or trying to figure out what the entity wants. Ethan tells her, I'm fearless, watch me, triple dog dare me, Felicia. And then Ethan gets in, puts the face mask on like I'm Iron Man, you know? Like that's literally what happens. And for a moment there, right, going off of the trailers, I thought this film, because I didn't watch any other people's reviews, I didn't watch nothing about this film. I went in there spoiler free, literally just my own thoughts and from what I was thinking from watching, being influenced from the trailers itself. Is Ethan about to travel back in time? You know, because I had forgotten about the whole chamber thing in Dead Reckoning, where that's how Gabriel was speaking to the entity or communicating with it. So I was like, what the hell is this? Like, he's gonna it's been a while since the other film, so I was like, what the heck is going on here? Go back to like, I don't know, Mission Impossible 3 or something, and then he's gonna see himself like stealing the rabbit's foot, almost like that film called Predestination. If you've seen that film, you know what I'm talking about. But the point is, like, it's just a way of, you know, having a conversation with the entity. And then he finds out its intentions are nuclear annihilation. That's what the entity wants. He wants to take control of the nuclear arsenals on Earth. So the final reckoning means the end of the world. Nuclear war. Like, that's what that means. He gets out of the chamber device breathing hard and scared. He's like traumatized, like, holy shit. And then ultimately runs to Luther as quickly as possible. You know, another Mission Impossible running scene. The whole time Ethan was in the device talking to the entity, Gabriel stole the poison pill from Luther and locked him in this catacomb with like a nuclear bomb. And so now Luther's like trying to get out this whole time while Ethan was in the chamber. Luther was trying to, like, there's moments in this movie that happen simultaneously, okay? This is one of them. So yeah, Luther's trying to get out and he can't go towards the bomb, tries to see if he could disarm it. Like, that's all he can do. All right, so Ethan gets to Luther and notices that Luther is just trying to defuse this bomb. He tries to open a steel gate that is locked. He can't. Luther tells him that he's already tried everything, therefore the only thing that he can do, try to minimize the explosion, the blast of this bomb by diffusing one of the wires, but the bomb will still go off no matter what. He's letting Ethan know, I might be able to make this unnuclear if I diffuse these wires, but the bomb's still gonna go off, so you better get out of here. And, you know, they have a moment because they figure out Luther's gonna die. He is going to die. There's nothing Ethan can do. He's trying to hit the damn metal again. these gates, man. MVP. Ethan can't destroy these damn gates. He survived so many other things, but we cannot get through these gates. But it's realistic, I guess, in that sense. There's not enough time for him to like come up with a solution, and Luther knows it. There's like a couple minutes left, or maybe a couple seconds, I don't remember exactly, but Luther gives him a speech basically saying you need to get out of here because the catacombs are going to collapse. For those we never meet, you know, he uses that a lot. Ethan starts running as the explosion goes off, then cuts to a scene where Ethan is defeated. He's like on his knees on the ground, and the police arrest him. Well, not the police, but okay, well, the United States government arrests him, okay? The U.S. government arrests him. He gets transported to a bunker where the president of the United States is. The team is separated from Ethan. They go over what Ethan and his team has done over the years, that facility where they're holding him with the president. And they're going over, like, I'm talking everything from Mission Impossible 1 to Chimera to the Rabbit's Foot to the bombing of the Kremlin. Everything that's happened. He gassed that room like a couple movies ago. And they're showing these scenes, and it's all cool. It's like, it's sick. So yeah, they're reviewing his files, and they show footage of his previous films and the most like climactic situations. The Madam President explains that the entity has taken over a majority of the world's nuclear arsenal, except for, at that point in the movie, UK, Russia, China, and the United States. And there's a big timer that is counting down 72 hours before the entire world's nuclear arsenal has fallen to the entity. And the president also explains that the countries are in chaos. The entity has compromised even high-ranking individuals in governmental agencies. It influenced individuals to join the entity's cause. And there's some type of like psychological warfare between the countries to launch their nukes before they lose control. And my question when watching this film was, why hasn't the entity launched all the nukes it has taken control of so far? And there's an answer for that. The entity wants total control to secure the annihilation of the human race. And at the same time, like if he launches now, like he's going to be vulnerable because of, you know, the electric magnetic pulse from a nuclear weapon or a thermonuclear weapon. Ethan explains that he needs an aircraft carrier to the Madam President in order to proceed with his plan. Keep in mind, he is in handcuffs the entire time. You see this scene in the trailers when Ethan says, I need you to trust me one last time. That's this scene. Madam President acts like she's not going to help Ethan and has him escorted out of the facility. We later find out that she trusts Ethan to save the world because Ethan is on the course to the aircraft carrier. She did help him. One of the soldiers gives Ethan an envelope and the cruciform key and says something along the lines of, "This is from the president. Good luck, sir." And he's off. As he is traveling to the aircraft carrier, he remembers what Luther said before dying. And, you know, the lines are playing. I believe it was like something like, "We live and die in the shadows for those we hold close and for those we never meet. Our lives are not defined by any one action. Our lives are the sum of our choices." It's a pretty good message, and I do agree with that. Ethan gets to the carrier and meets with the admiral, or I believe it was the captain. Was it a captain, admiral? Somebody tell me in the comments. She opens the envelope and she sees the date, May 22, 1996, which I didn't know at the time, right? What's so special about this date? Well, little fun fact, I looked it up. That's actually the release date of the first Mission Impossible film. Isn't that crazy? It was like, oh, a little Easter egg right there that they added. My favorite Mission Impossible film has to be Mission Impossible Fallout with Henry Cavill. I think that's like peak MI, but my second favorite's got to be the first film. So that when I read that, I was all geeked out. I was like, oh wow, I didn't know. I forgot that that's when I knew the year that it released because that's the year I was born, and that's why I hold that film dear to me because I'm like, oh, 1996, baby. But I didn't know it was May 22, so that's cool. They show a scene where she remembers that date. It seems like she is in like Serbia fighting with the president. So it's something between the admiral and Madam President. It's like a very special day or something like that they fought together, and it's supposed to mean something, but there's no details revealed about it. It's something that they hold close. They shared a moment in that time, and it woke up something in the admiral, and she said, you know what? Let's approve whatever Ethan needs. You need my aircraft carrier? Here you go. Like, hands over the keys and stuff. Not like that, not that drastically, but like the point is like she's gonna comply with whatever Ethan asks her. So there is a theory that the admiral was connected to one of the lost members of Ethan's original team, but I don't know how credible that theory is. But Ethan explains his plan to Admiral Neely, which revolves around using her aircraft carrier to get close to the lost Russian submarine to retrieve the Podkoba that has the original source code of the entity. The lost Russian submarine called the Sevastopol got buried in the Arctic Ocean near the Bering Sea after the entity tricked the Russians into hitting themselves with their own torpedo. And they show a scene of that. I'm not sure if they show it right there, but they definitely show a scene in the movie. Admiral Neely is surprised at Ethan's simplistic plan. She says something like, that's it, that's your plan. You know, the admiral's like surprised. The chances of this plan succeeding is like damn near impossible, like no pun intended. In the spoiler free section of this film, the planets need to align. So Ethan needs to hope that his team figures out the coordinates of the lost submarine, send it to him, have a submarine get him close enough to dive even deeper into the water, somehow open the submarine hatch, get inside, retrieve the Podkoba, and swim up to the surface. And hopefully his team gets there fast enough to cut the ice and pull him out in a decompression chamber. That is the plan. I'm not. There's a reason why submarines are built, because humans can't survive that deep into the water, right? No matter with what special suit or whatever the hell he was wearing. Like I said, for the sake of action, Ethan gets in a Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey and he gets transported further into the Arctic Ocean, where they come across Russian border waters where Russian jets are warning them by showing them their missiles. And the pilot's saying this, she's like, this is the only warning we're gonna get. Like, the jets are literally facing and showing the missiles. On the next one, we're going to blow your shit up if you don't get the hell out of here. Ethan heads towards the rear end of the aircraft, one of the soldiers, and I think you see this in the trailers. He's like, where the hell are you going? And then Ethan just decides to pencil dive into the cold waters. This is the Arctic. You know how fast Ethan's gonna get hypothermia? That's what I'm thinking. It's like the V-22s leave and they show hypothermia Ethan by himself until he's not. There's just so happens to be some scuba divers from an American submarine that help him. Ethan should have died there. It's so coincidental. These scuba divers are there, right? But whatever. They give him blankets and he's taking a hot shower to obviously warm up. He meets the crew and the captain of the submarine. The captain tells Ethan, you must be out of your damn mind. And I mean, he is. The dude's literally Ethan Hunt. Ethan tells him why he's there. And I forgot to mention that. Meanwhile, his team that consists of Grace, Benji, Paris, and Degas, probably saying that wrong, are trying to find out the coordinates of the Sevastopol. These scenes, like I said before, are happening simultaneously. The team went to an island called St. Matthews in the Bering Sea, which is like a SOSUS. It stands for Sound Surveillance System for the Cold War era. And they find the CIA analyst, William Donlow, from the first Mission Impossible film. So that's how they connect the first Mission Impossible film with this character, William Donlow. William Donlow ended up in the Bering Sea because Ethan stole the knock list. I don't know if you guys remember the non-official cover list that Ethan was stealing in the first film. The guy with the glasses that was going in and out, and then, you know, he was sick going to the restroom because of that whole pen liquid thing. That's William Donlow. And that whole reason he's there is because of Ethan, right? He stole the knock list right under his nose. The knock list contains the list of secret agent identities from the CIA. The team also finds that the Russians beat them there and they are after the same thing, which is the coordinates of the Sevastopol submarine. They also have the second real crucible key with them. And in Dead Reckoning, there were 2 legitimate keys and 1 counterfeit. Grace was trying to reason with the Russians that this is what the entity wants, for the 2 nations to be hostile towards each other, not work with each other, so creating conflict. And then William Donlow explains to the Russians that he needs time to look for the coordinates, but that's a lie. I'll get into it here in a little bit. Meanwhile, Ethan and the submarine crew members are explaining Mark 7 pressure suit and how it uses a gas that is classified that will help Ethan sustain the submarine depths. The Mark 7 pressure suit, that's what it was called in the film. Sounds something straight out of Iron Man. Like, this is the Mark 7, this is the Mark 1, this is the Mark 3, you know, like, and they're explaining to him how to use the suit, how it works on the depths, right? The reason they're explaining as well is for the audience to understand, give them a reason to not break their suspension of disbelief. So I guess that's why that scene is there, in my opinion. And yeah, they don't explain about that classified gas. They just say it's classified. And that's it. That's our explanation. That's why it could go deeper into the water. As they are searching, Donlo whispers to Benji that he has the coordinates already. Writing the coordinates down on a sticky note, you hear the dogs barking in the background. And I guess, should I mention why Donlo lied? I don't know, but he already had the coordinates. Like, there was a while back where the Russians came. That wasn't the first time he got visited by other agents, and they were looking for something specific, and he hid that from them, and it was the codes or the coordinates. So that's why he has that. He didn't have to look for it in those boxes or anything like that. He asked the Russians if his wife can go like feed the dogs and that she requires some help. Grace volunteers. The Russians agree. In a subtle way, William gives his wife the sticky note with the coordinates, gives her a kiss, and like I said, a little joke here: get ready with the voodoo magic for Ethan, he's going to need it. Like, straight up. He doesn't say that, he doesn't whisper that, he says something else, right? Here are the coordinates, or whatever. But it's just funny because that's literally what I forgot her name, Donald's wife, Tapisa, that's her name, is going to do off screen, of course, because we don't see this. Because it was much more than that decompressing chamber that we're about to talk about. Grace and Tapisa, Donlo's wife, head outside, accompanied by a Russian soldier. There is tension. Paris and Degas are sitting in the couches with a Russian soldier guarding them. While all of this is happening, again, Ethan is training on the treadmill, preparing his oxygen levels for the mission. Ethan is the only one that could stop the nuclear destruction. At least this is what it feels like watching the film. And they show a submarine member creeping up to Ethan with a knife, about to stab him in the back, building tension. The American submarine member that was influenced by the entity. While that's happening, they go feed the dogs. Like, it's just jumping from scene to scene, just trying to build tension. And they go feed the dogs, Grace and Tapisa. The soldier finds Grace suspicious and points his gun at her. I don't remember exactly why, but that happens. Tapisa hits the soldier with a shovel. He shoots his gun, alarming everyone inside. Paris instantaneously takes action and grabs onto the soldier's weapons and starts firing at them. Ethan sees the crew member about to stab him in a reflection. He falls off the treadmill intentionally to hit the person. Grace and Tapisa handle the soldier outside. Inside, Paris kills a soldier and Degas has his action scene. Benji's also fighting the Russian commander, which I forgot to mention, but whatever, it's irrelevant. The exchange of gunfire and conflict caused the homestead to catch fire. That happens. Ethan wrestles with the crew member and ends up knocking him out with the line, "You spend too much time on the internet." Knocks him out. Donlo ends up sending the coordinates to Ethan before everything burns. Yeah, that happens. The team gets out and we cut to Ethan in the American submarine again. Ethan gets the coordinates and they notice that they lead to a location on the opposite side of the world. It's like, what? I thought it was supposed to be in the Arctic. Nope, it's just a diversion. Before we keep going, I need to mention this. I wrote down in my notes, because I was writing down notes as I was watching this film too, because I knew I was going to make a review for this movie, and I was like, very complicated plot to understand for the general audience. And I mean, at this point, if you stepped out to go to the restroom, or you had a phone call and you had to step out and you come back, you're lost. And they figure out it was done on purpose in case the message is intercepted by the Russians. They reciprocate the coordinates and it leads them to the exact location of the Russian submarine. So essentially, just in case it gets intercepted, the Russians are going to think it's going to be in the other side of the world. But it doesn't take a genius. If he figured it out, the Russians are most likely also going to figure out that location of the Sevastopol is over here. I think they do, because they notice that a Russian submarine is following them, following the American one. And Ethan tells the captain to lead them away and that he is getting out. Ethan explains to the captain that his decompression chamber was never part of the plan, because the captain's like, what do you mean you're going to get out? You still need to come back to our decompression chamber for you to not get sick. You cut to Grace with Tapisa. Tapisa's showing Grace how to conduct the dogs in the snow sled, essentially how to be a musher. She warns her about polar bears. She's not really speaking. She's more like she's communicating with her with like non-verbal communication, essentially using gestures. She knows a different language, a native language that Grace doesn't know. She's just trying to communicate that there's polar bears. He gives her the weapon and they are off. Ethan has finished putting the Mark 7 suit on and is in the decompression chamber. He's told that he will still need to go 500 more feet below to reach his destination. He roughly has like 30 minutes to complete the mission, and that he must exhale repeatedly as he goes up to the surface. Holding his breath will explode his lungs. That's what he's told by the crew. I forgot to mention the crew members, but it is what it is. It's not that important. So they give Ethan a transmitter which will help help his team locate him within a 2-mile radius, which is something I forgot about during the movie. So I was like, there's no way they're going to find him in the ice. And then we cut to this scene. This scene is crazy. Ethan gets out of the decompression chamber and starts swimming away from the submarine. He needs to avoid the propellers of both submarines, and there's just great music as he's going deeper and deeper into the water. That the music that it reminded me of was from a Halo 2 mission. I already mentioned this in the spoiler-free section. Go listen to that Halo 2 mission called the Sacred Icon and then the Flood section, and tell me that doesn't sound similar. I'll even play it here. That was nostalgia. It's like the whole ambience there is really, really cool. The music during the scene was like mysterious, ominous, and thrilling as Ethan is going deep into the water, and almost like it's an ancient ritual of some sort, or like the Easter Island statues are humming underwater. So like I said, there's pros and cons in this film, and I really did enjoy this scene in particular. So Ethan starts to descend and finally gets to the Sevastopol. He opens the hatch and closes it quickly. In this process, the water went into the submarine, creating a disbalance, right? That's important because I'm about to mention something else here in a little bit. Ethan finds the power switch to the submarine, restoring power. The water inside is making the submarine move further along the edge of the trench because the submarine, the Sevastopol, is like in this edge of this like hill, or I guess it is called a trench. The Sevastopol is in danger of going deeper into the water, which is not going to be good for Ethan because I'm pretty sure that suit is not going to hold going deeper into that trench. He shouldn't even be surviving at that point, but whatever, it's fine. So tension is built. Can Ethan complete the mission before the submarine goes deeper into the trench? If you are claustrophobic, you're going to hate the scene. He opens another hatch that leads to a torpedo room. Water continues to flood in, shifting the submarine. Ethan continues and opens another hatch and goes into a room that seems like the engine room, but it's where the Podkova is being stored. The sub is tilting while he is trying to open it. He uses his crucible key to unlock the Podkova, takes the Podkova with him, and goes into the torpedo room. Ethan is swimming between the out-of-place torpedoes. Since the submarine was shifting, a missile has created an obstruction, and now he can't leave the way he came from. And he gets the idea of leaving the submarine using a torpedo tube, but his suit is too thick. And then I'm like thinking, like, is he this guy about to remove his suit, which is keeping him alive, right, in the first place? And I already had my suspension of disbelief like tested. He needs to take off his Mark 7 suit in order to fit through the torpedo tube. He does so and starts to get out as the submarine is falling deeper into the trench. He was told, like, as you're going up, you're going to have to exhale. You can't inhale because your lungs will explode. I wrote down in my notes, suspension of disbelief must be really strong if you believe that Ethan can survive this. Depths of cold water freezing, convulsions he was having. It's true, man. Like at some point, you just gotta hold on to that it's a roller coaster ride of an experience when it comes to like what's realistic and what's not. Man, this one was a test. But I love Mission Impossible, man. So I gave it, I just held on, dude. I just had to. The critic inside me was just laughing. Okay. Ethan starts to swim to the surface, but is experiencing tremendous pain. He activates the transmitter along the way. He is exhaling like he was told to do, now hoping that his team finds him because he only has a few seconds at best, and he does activate the transmitter as he's going up. Like I said, you need to hold on to that suspension of disbelief and assume that Ethan is one of the most gifted human beings ever. The audience sees a vision of Grace finding him, and they cut to Ethan and Grace in a mobile decompression chamber on the surface. That's exactly what happened. The odds of this happening are ridiculous. I wrote down in my notes. I can see people being upset at this. Ethan is the real Iron Man. Not even Thanos can stop him. Ethan is Jesus Christ. That was literally what I wrote down. Grace tells Ethan, you did it. Ethan is more worried about the Podkova than anything else, asking Grace where it is. Like, he doesn't even give a shit if he's like, where's the Podkova? Topisa looks into the decompression chamber, smiling and winking. And I'm telling you, bro, she did that Simpsons thing. She did it for that native Simpsons lady. That's Topisa. That is Topisa in this film. She literally gave Ethan the healing powers of the natives. Okay, because there's just no way that the decompression chamber did all the healing. No way.
Homer, who's that?
She used to be my therapist.
Once Ethan gets nursed back to health, they get on an airplane. William Donlow tries to introduce himself to Ethan, but Ethan already knows who he is. Again, this is the way they connect Mission Impossible 1. Ethan tries to apologize for what he did to Donlow 30 years ago. Donlow stops him. He says, man, it's a matter of perspective. If you wouldn't have done that, I would have never met my wife. That I owe you my life, is what he tells him. It's a really wholesome moment. Ethan and Donlow agree that the safest place on Earth is the Doomsday Vault. Okay, what is this Doomsday Vault? It's a standalone exabyte server. Exabyte meaning 1 billion, not million. 1 billion gigabytes of storage. The entity chose that server room because it will be invulnerable to the electromagnetic pulse from the nuclear weapons. Like Noah's Ark, but for knowledge, essentially. That's what this Doomsday Bowl is. The entity is the only sole survivor. So technically it's not Noah's Ark because Noah's Ark got like a bunch of animals. And anyway, the point is, it's almost like Noah's Ark. Benji explains that Luther's poison pill combined with the Podkova, the original source code of the entity, when uploaded to cyberspace will create a ruse for the entity, making it seem like it's uploading to the server room, but it's actually uploading itself to a 5D optical data drive. That's what it's called. That they call it a 5D optical data drive. You know, and I think Donlow said something like, I thought these were theoretical, or somebody said that. I don't remember who. The drive can hold 360,000 gigabytes. And Benji explains. And then Ethan says they were until Luther built one. They're basically going to trap the genie in a lamp, trap the genie in a bottle. Once the entity thinks it's safe, it will launch all the nuclear arsenals in the world. In order to prevent that from happening, they must disconnect the drive, the 5D optical drive, in exactly 100 milliseconds. Just think about that for a second, okay? I can't even hit the jackpot in the Chuck E. Cheese or in the Dave and Buster's game, and you're telling me Grace is about to do this in 100 milliseconds. Okay. Again, a very complicated plot to understand for the general audience. Like, this is happening very quick. Okay, so you got to be paying attention when they're explaining this. They don't warn you when they're about to explain this stuff. They just go. My brain was like,
Bing boing ding ding boing ding.
if they do it too soon, the entity won't be trapped, which ends with nuclear destruction. If they do it too late, the entity will be trapped, but will launch the nukes anyway because it thinks it's safe. This process has to be done in 100 milliseconds. Nothing more, nothing less. The fate of the world must be decided at the blink of an eye. And you see what I was talking about in the non-spoiler section? It's become a hyperbole of the series. The exaggerated film of the series. It was crazy, bro. And yeah, that is a Twilight the New Moon poster in the background. I don't give a shit. Best movie in the world, baby. No, it's not. My mom gave it to me and it's special to me. So what am I supposed to do with a gift like that? Okay, just throw it away, throw it in the trash because the movie is trash or something? At the end of the day, it's for the memes, baby. All right, back to the review. Holy shit. Oh, I forgot to mention, Ethan was in that chamber device talking to the entity. The entity showed Ethan the Doomsday Vault and how he expects Ethan to let it in. So this Doomsday Vault cannot be accessed from the outside, and it must be uploaded from the inside since it's safe from any external electrical activity. And since Gabriel has Luther's poison pill, he will also be there because he expects Ethan to hand over the Podkova, which, using the poison pill that Luther created and the Podkova, he's going to be able to control the entity. I guess in his mind, that's what he believes. But what happens if Gabriel didn't get the poison pill to begin with? What was the original plan? Oh yeah, I'm just going to force Ethan to get this Podkova, and that's going to help me control the entity because I have the Podkova has the original source code of the entity. But like, how are you going to damage it? Or I guess you're going to have your own Luther or some other person that creates a poison pill of some type also to force the entity to at your will. I don't know what the original plan was for Gabriel. I'm not gonna lie, that character is just trash. Holy Okay, so since the vault is electronically shielded, Ethan needs to give the Podcoba to Gabriel and let him go outside to upload the poison pill. The only way they can beat the entity is to give Gabriel the Podcoba and let him go outside to upload the poison pill. Or to be able to upload the poison. Benji says something like 1 chance in a trillion. And this part reminds me of Doctor Strange, like I said before, when he goes forward in time to see all of the possibilities the Avengers have of beating Thanos. And then Grace and the team are having doubts about this mission succeeding. Like they're going over the mission as they're flying over to the Doomsday Vault. And Ethan trusts Grace with disconnecting the 5D drive since she is great at pickpocketing. Earlier in the film, Grace saved Ethan in the social event by pickpocketing the guards' weapons. They use the same line, but this time Ethan asks the question, what separates a good pickpocket from a great one? Grace responds, timing. Grace is like, builds confidence because of that, I guess. And they go to the bunker and notice that it's not being guarded. Ethan says they know what's coming. They have gone home, which is true. Nuclear annihilation, essentially. We cut to the president's administration and they are having doubts if Ethan is still alive. They are also calculating the death tolls of a minimal nuclear strike fallout before they lose control of their arsenal to the entity. Letting another country bomb them without retaliation to give Ethan more time is like what they're wrestling with. Like the president is also wrestling with the fact of making a gesture. I believe that's what they use, which is like a self-political coup being advised by her administration. So essentially what the gesture is like sacrificing a US city, like 100 million lives to save 7 billion. And thankfully they never reveal what city was the most expendable, but but if you really want to find out, you could go off of the clues that were given in the film, but they don't name it for the general audience to like start panicking. Going back to Ethan and the team, they finally get to Gabriel. Surprise. Gabriel has a final reckoning for Ethan. He literally says, your final reckoning. Ethan moves a massive tarp showing Gabriel's a final present for Ethan, a 30 megaton bomb with one of the men holding the detonator. I was under the impression that if Gabriel's man lets go of the button in the detonator, the bomb was going to kill everyone instantly. But no, that's not what happens. It's just a timer to give Ethan more time to chase after him. It's like some convenience. Like if he lets go, it's just the timer starts. And I was like, oh, okay. And the movie cliche where the villain is explaining his plans to the protagonist, to be fair, Ethan does ask like, what is going to happen to you? He is like kind of stalling a little bit or something, but Gabriel explains he has a plan ready, and as soon as he gets the Podcoba, he is out of here. Gabriel believes that the entity is bluffing and wants Ethan to live in a world that he creates by controlling the entity. This line, like, it reminded me of like Gabriel's almost like the Joker, but I'm not putting him in that level. I'm just saying that right there in particular was like, it's almost like Gabriel's the Joker and he comes to the realization that Ethan completes him. That's what it felt like with Gabriel. But like, I'm not comparing, like, Joker is... that villain is 100 times better than this damn character, okay? I'm not comparing him to the Joker. I'm just saying this specific scene, it reminded me of the Joker. Briggs comes in and Kittredge storm the party uninvited, which makes the man holding the detonator to let go, and the countdown begins. Kittredge has his moment. He doesn't believe Ethan's plan to let Gabriel go with the Podcoba is the real one. He believes Ethan has a different plan under his sleeve, and then he has his whole monologue moment. He refuses, like where Ethan refuses to sacrifice the one he holds close. This is the reason why we are in this situation. And then Gabriel's men start firing and there's a shootout. Benji gets shot in the process. Gabriel somehow gets hold of the Podcoba, gets in the vehicle, and dips. The team tells Ethan to go after him, reassuring him that they will figure out how to disable the bomb. Ethan leaves and the team figures out how to stop the bomb from going nuclear. Unfortunately, someone has to stay behind and minimize the blast, just like the bomb that killed Luther. And I wrote down in my notes, another bomb to disarm, another Ethan vehicle chase, and that's but it was entertaining, okay? And then more notes. Ethan crashes the car and holds onto the seatbelt with his arm so he won't go flying off the vehicle, which I thought it was pretty cool. Oh yeah, Degas, Donlo, and Tapisa stay behind to disable the bomb. Grace, Paris, and injured Benji go to the server room. Benji has a collapsed lung and is losing oxygen quickly because he got shot. He's starting to pass out. He's trying to explain to Grace how to hack the server so they can let the entity in, while simultaneously explaining to Paris how to operate on him. Paris needs to puncture Benji's chest to get rid of the air between his lung and chest wall, or he is going to die. And I believe believe they used like a pen. And in the meantime, Donlo figures out that they might have 10 seconds to run to the server room when they cut the wires of the bomb. So Benji has Grace make an antenna to know that Ethan has uploaded the poison pill. There's a comedy moment with Benji passing out in the middle of giving instructions, something like, no matter what you do, Grace, don't cut the, and then he passes out, right? And they scream out his name and he says, the red wires, you know? The scene keeps going. Ethan is chasing after Gabriel's yellow airplane. While this is happening, seems like he's getting close, and then the airplane takes off. And I was about to say, if Ethan catches up to that plane, bro, I'm out of the theater. Like, I'm dipped it. I wasn't gonna have it, but thankfully that doesn't happen. And my brother mentioned this, but the Deus Ex Machina moment of the film happens, where all hope is lost until he turns around and there's a red airplane behind him, and he grabs onto that one, grabs onto the landing gear specifically, and we get an action sequence of Ethan trying to hijack this plane. So aileron and barrel rolls are happening in the process, right? Because the red airplane notices, or sorry, the pilot of the red airplane notices Ethan trying to hijack him. Ethan finally knocks out the pilot. The plane tilts, the pilot falls off, and Ethan takes control of the red airplane. And that's how it was really cool. This scene alone is worth the price of admission, because it was a combination of not just CGI. There was some CGI, but majority of it was actually practical effects. And I appreciate practical effects, okay? I really do. But anyways, I want Tom Cruise, man, to like, it would be freaking sick if he got a hold of like the Alien franchise, because he's known just for practical effects. I want more practical effects in my Alien films. The xenomorphs, not just CGI. Like, I'm going out of topic here. Gotta focus. But Alien Romulus, I guess, kind of did that, and it seems like it's going in a good direction, but that's a story for another time. To make the scene even more exciting, they're going back and forth between Benji passing out, getting punctured, and Ethan hijacking. And he hijacks the plane and keeps going after Gabriel. Somehow Gabriel gets behind Ethan. He tries to ram Ethan with his own airplane, and I'm like, what is the plan of the yellow plane? Crash and commit suicide into the red plane? Ethan is the Red Baron, I wrote down, while the yellow plane is after him. Very similar to the Mission Impossible Fallout ending. Shout out to that movie. That's my favorite MI film. But yeah, instead of airplanes in that film, it was helicopters, and he was after Henry Cavill. That movie's goated, man. If you haven't seen that film, I recommend you guys watch that. Madam President denies the entity. They shut off power and access to the nuclear arsenal. A follower of the entity tries to kill the president. You know, she just decided to just shut off the nuclear arsenal, not giving the entity control over it. Which I figured, well, if she can do that, why didn't other countries do that? But whatever. And then a general shoots the traitor. The U.S. is defenseless and vulnerable to anyone with nuclear power, including the entity. Cut back to Grace. She's receiving instructions from Benji. She's inserting the 5D optical drive. When the red light has turned green, Ethan has uploaded the pill, and she must disconnect the drive in exactly 100 milliseconds. Ethan loses the yellow plane, and Gabriel is trying to find him since there is cloud obstruction. Ethan somehow is directly under Gabriel. Ethan, I guess that engine is really loud, but you would think you'd be able to like sense the presence of an airplane right below you, but whatever. And with one of the craziest maneuvers where Ethan is standing up, surfing on this crop duster while keeping his foot on the control column so he could keep the plane steady. Oh, I forgot about this. He finally gets a hold of a landing gear of the red airplane, and immediately after doing so, his plane blows up. It's a cool sequence. As he is climbing, Gabriel notices him and starts doing rolls, loops, hammerheads. He finally gets close to the cockpit, and Gabriel starts swinging a knife around. I believe it was with his left. He's like swinging around the knife, right? Trying to like stab Ethan. Ethan grabs onto his arm, and with the help of the velocity of the plane, he swings. He like just grabs onto his arm, and his arm is just like dislocated, breaks it. And it's brutal, right? And Gabriel's screaming in pain. So the plane is upside down, and they're holding on for dear life. I think Gabriel's holding on to his seatbelt. He knows he's about to like, he can't hold any longer. And he just says something like, I have the only parachute, good luck. And then he lets go. It's literally just like a cartoon. He hits his groin against the vertical stabilizer of the back of the plane. His body violently does a front flip due to the like velocity and hits his forehead against the top part of the tail. I'm not making this up. This was literally a cartoon death. Was it satisfying? I mean, I guess, you know, whatever. I didn't care about Gabriel. So, but it was funny to see him die that way. Gabriel is dead. Ethan is trying to take control of the plane. I forgot where he got his parachute from because, you know, I guess it wasn't the last parachute like Gabriel had said. Maybe that was set to try to discourage him. He jumps off, activates his parachute, and it spontaneously starts combusting, and his parachute is on fire, and he's trying to plug the poison pill into the pod cobra as he is free falling. Like, he meaning Ethan. Ethan is trying to do this. He finally plugs it in. Grace notices and says, Ethan, you know, and then she disconnects the 5D optical drive with her pickpocketing skills. And I think there was like a flash or something. It's like, oh, did they do it? Did they not? Did they launch the nukes? And of course, like, you know, that moment where she says, Ethan, that I felt like that was that was way more than 100 milliseconds in itself. Like, I don't know. To me, it's like, that's damn near impossible right there. No pun intended. Like, that right there just got. And yeah, there's a moment of realization that the team did it after the white flash. They saved the world. They show Ethan survived because of the emergency parachute, you know, because the original parachute, a parachute has two. It has a spare just in case the first one doesn't work. And that's the one that he survived with. And then Luther's message plays from the poison pill. Luther's talking at the end of the film made me feel like an ending from a Transformers film, like, cause he Luther just starts talking like he's Optimus Prime. All jokes aside, it's a good message from what I recall. He said, I never had a doubt, brother. I knew you'd find a way. We are masters of our fate. Any hope for a better future is determined by the actions that we take. Help each other, care for one another. You know, he doesn't say it like this, you know, he says it in his more intellect words. And then the world still needs you, even though they will never know it. We who live and die in the shadows, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck, Ethan. And it was a pretty heartwarming message. As this whole dialogue was happening, they show the Horatio Nelson statue and then show Trafalgar Square in London, where the team's meeting. Yeah, the team meaning Grace, Benji, Paris, Degas, and Ethan. Grace hands Ethan the 5D optical drive containing the entity. No words are exchanged except for smiles and nods, and they all depart in separate ways. And as Luther says in the last part, good luck, Ethan. Ethan turns his head and smirks at the camera. They left the film open to interpretation. It is entirely possible that Paramount Pictures can like green light another one of these films, since it did pretty well. But did it do pretty well? Question mark. Because I mean, looking at the budget numbers, 400 million. Holy Jesus. That's Force Awakens levels. It's not going to make it's not making 2 billion. It's not making, I don't even think it's going to reach 1 billion. It's at 500. And last time I checked, let me check again. That number is at 562 million. Yeah, it's stopping right there. It's not even going to reach 600 mil. At least they made their money back and some, but you know, knowing Paramount Pictures, when you invest that much money into a film, they're not looking for just 160 million of profit. They're expecting way more. They're expecting a plethora amount of money, and that's just not going to happen with this film. So I think this is the end of Mission Impossible, and I think it was a good series, man. I mean, I love Mission Impossible. I grew up watching Mission Impossible films, and if this is the end, I feel like I said at the beginning of this review, it pays homage to everything. Now, wouldn't it have been cool to see Ethan go back in time when all those shenanigans? Is it going to get to that level where it's like Fast X going into space? I mean, I guess it just did with this film, but not as bad as Fast X. But like I said, if you love Mission Impossible, you're going to love this film. And if you don't mind turning off your brain for a couple seconds here and there, maybe a couple minutes, then you'll be fine. You'll enjoy it. It was worth going to theaters. Just that submarine scene alone, and not just that submarine scene, but the submarine scene and the last scene, those action sequences are just worth the price of admission. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a like or a dislike if you disliked it. I'll talk to you in the next one, okay? Peace.
That doesn't make sense.